I just want to begin by thanking you for watching this video, thanking you for your interest in helping us find a way to secure our magnet programs in the city of Hammond. Thank you ahead of time for sending me your thoughts, your input, your concerns, your ideas on how we can move this idea forward. My contact information is at the bottom of this slide. It'll be at the bottom of the last slide as well, and I really do look forward to hearing from you. We're going to move through this quickly. You'll see this is not really a slick presentation. The idea is to just provide you with the information so that we can begin the conversation. Let's get started. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Again, it's not a campaign video, not necessarily an argument. Just going to go through some points, provide some information, talk about the proposal. First, we'll start with just a short background on the Hammond Magnet programs. We'll talk about why we would need to have a secured fund for those programs. We'll talk about how we would collect money for that particular fund, and then finally we'll close out by talking about what specific schools are involved and what specific funds would be involved in the program. Okay, so let's just review the journey of the Hammond Magnet programs. Of course, we won't be able to cover everything about them, but we'll kind of hit the high points here. The program started really in the fall of 2005 when Hammond Eastside piloted the program of what were called accelerated classes. At that point, it was done through a partnership of the school system, the city of Hammond, Southeastern. Of course, the Hammond Chamber played a large role, and even some leaders at North Oaks Hospital were involved in that process. There was no appropriation done to do this. It was really just kind of an idea, and there wasn't really a whole lot to it. It was just an idea of being able to cluster some accelerated children together, putting them in kind of a separate wing, and seeing if this would draw back some middle class families to the public school system. The city, because there was no appropriation to try to get this done, meaning no appropriation from the school system, the city tried to put some seed money into this, and so the mayor asked that the city council appropriate $60,000 to support this effort, and they agreed to do that, and that held us over until the voters in July of 2007 agreed to invest in this idea with a 6 mil tax, a property tax, and with the promise being that if they agreed to make this investment, we would have these accelerated classes as well as some performing arts programs for those accelerated classes at Hammond Eastside. This effort was successful. It went on for 3 years, and then we went back to the voters in April of 2010 and asked for an additional 3-year investment of 9 mills. And the promise was made that if the voters agreed to make this investment, we would expand the program to additional schools, specifically over to West Side as well as to Woodland Park, and we would expand the program through the 8th grade. There was also the promise made that the arts component of the program would be expanded to the non-accelerated kids in addition to the accelerated kids. The campaign was commonly referred to actually as the Arts for All campaign. So the Hammond voters agreed to that investment in April of 2010. Of course, the big change came in the fall of 2011. This was largely a part of an effort to voluntarily desegregate the schools through the desegregation plan. But this was when the school system began the process of adding defined magnet programs to each of the Hammond campuses and this was in addition to the accelerated classes. So we kept the accelerated classes on those Hammond campuses. Actually, we even expanded that concept parish-wide because it was so successful. And then we added these extra concepts at each of these campuses, and we'll talk more specifically about each of those campuses. But we started that process in the fall of 2011, and we did that without any extra tax dollars because we had received a $3 million grant to help with this transition. We also did it through what's commonly referred to as a turnaround model, where we put in new principals at each one of these campuses, and we gave those new principals the authority to hire entirely new staffs if they so chose. Now, that's not to say that they did, in fact, hire entirely new staff. But they had that authority, and I think they did in fact hire a largely new staffs. That transition went on. There was a lot of training that took place, lots of investment, lots of supplies were bought, and that has been ongoing. Finally, in May of 2013, we went to the voters and asked that they secure a source of funding to keep these programs going in the long term. That was rejected by the voters at that point. Of course, after that election, there was a tremendous amount of concern about whether all of this effort and whether this journey was going to come to an end. However, we were saved through some last-minute budget deals, both at the Louisiana legislature and at the school board office, and we were able to maintain the programs for at least one additional year. And so now we are at the discussion of how we might be able to hopefully maintain the programs for the long term. Okay, so moving on, we'll now discuss why the magnet programs would need their own secure source of funds. And generally, the answer to that question is that there is no other way to fund the magnet programs absent them having their own source of funding. Just as evidence of that, I would point out that even in the previous slide, that throughout the history of these programs, there has always had to be some other way outside of the regular funding source of school programs to fund the operation of those programs. And I'm going to show you in a little bit more detail why that has always been the case. But the basic answer to that question is that in Tangipahoa Parish, at least, almost all of our funding for public education comes from the state of Louisiana. And the state of Louisiana only provides funding for the most basic level of education. And because it is state dollars, almost every single one of those dollars comes along with very specific state mandates. And again, we'll look at that a little bit closer in the next few slides. But for those reasons, there's not a whole lot of room for anything over and above or extra, so to speak. So again, if we want to do anything that is extra or anything that is more than basic, we have to provide some other way to fund that. Now, there may be a question in some people's mind, at least, as to whether we want to have anything more than basic in the city of Hammond. But maybe that's a question for some other discussion. But for the purposes of this presentation, we will assume that we do want to have something other than just the most basic level of education, or that we need to have something other than the most basic level of education in the city of Hammond. I also just want to point out to you that while grants are certainly a good thing sometimes to maybe help start a program or to maybe kind of help get a program off its feet. They are not a long-term source of to keep a program going. And so in this case, we did secure a grant to help kind of get the program going, but they are it was not available. It was not something that we were able to get for the long term. In fact, we did try to get an additional grant last year, and we were declined for a grant. So grants are not a secure source of funding. All right, so let's look a little bit closer in this issue. All right, so without getting too much into the weeds, just want to kind of show you the primary sources of revenue that run our school system for us. We have the state funds, comes to us what's called the Minimum Fund Foundation. Again, all those state dollars that, of course, come in with all of those state mandates. We collect the two sales tax pennies. That's two sales tax pennies parish-wide. That's pretty much the same amount in sales tax that every other parish in the state collects. One of those sales tax pennies is dedicated to sales to teachers' salaries. The other one is primarily used to cover maintenance, construction, technology needs for all of the 32 campuses that we have parish-wide. The voters have given us some flexibility on how to use those funds, thankfully, and that's been a huge help. But as you'll see in the next few slides, uh, that still doesn't leave us a whole lot of room, but certainly it's a big help to us. And then of course we have the parish-wide constitutional tax. That's the 4 mills that we collect each year by virtue of the state constitution. All right, so let's dig into this a little bit more. All right, so here just in the next few slides, I just want to show you what the budget for the school system has looked like from a growth standpoint. And I want you to try to do some of the math here in your head, and I want to see if you catch something with me. But you'll see here that pretty much from 2008, 2009 through last year, that the budget has been almost flat. Okay, the only increase really was in last year because we had a pretty good uptick in the number of students, but the state has not increased the amount per student that they were sending to us in the MFP. You'll see how much of a difference that makes, because from in the year 2007 2008 versus 2008 2009, they did do that 2.75 growth in the MFP per student, which of course made that big significant increase. But in all of the remaining years, we did not receive that increase. But $103.5 million was the total amount in the general fund to support public education in this parish. And that was from all of those revenue streams that we looked at in the previous slide. All right, so on this slide, you'll see that of that amount on in the general fund, this is the amount each year that was spent on salaries. And you'll see that over the last few years, we have um, each year been cutting salaries as much as we can. Each time that we've had folks that have either retired or left, and we thought that we could cut that position. We have cut that position, and again, as we go along, you're going to see why we had to do that. In addition to the fact that sometimes it was just the right thing to do, but we have cut salaries, and last year we had the salaries portion of the budget that went down from 70 down to $79.1 million. Now, let me tell you one thing, that unlike in the business world, when how you can, if you get into a tough budget year, you can either just lay off people or cut their hours or cut their salaries. Apparently in the government world, you simply can't do that. State law, remember, state mandates, state law. You simply cannot just lay people off. You can't you can hardly even furlough people. You can't reduce their salary. You can't do any of those kinds of things. Um, and so we have had a tremendous amount of difficulty in trying to kind of keep things financially sound during these last few years. Okay, in this slide, I want you to notice that, uh, again, in those same years that the state has not been providing us with the normal and customary increase in the per pupil allocation in state funding, they have been mandating that we increase the amount of money that we submit to the teachers' retirement fund for what's commonly referred to as the unfunded liability or accrued liability. So last year, $19.8 million of the general fund had to go into the retirement account um, for our employees. And again, just I want to hope you're keeping up um, with the addition here, so I can show you where we ended up at the end here. All right, and then finally, showing you the increase in healthcare cost. Um, and again, all of these are in years when, as a general rule, the budget was pretty much flat, but these costs were going up. And again, the only slides that I have shown you are costs associated with the personal capital of the system. We haven't even talked about um, just the other types of expenses that go along with running a school system. All we have talked about so far are the salaries and benefits of the school system. And you'll see that with this figure here, we're now, just for last year, the health insurance alone was $17.1 million. And so if you add this $17.1 million to what we had to pay into the retirement system, to what we paid to the employees for salary, and you were to subtract that from the total amount of revenue that came into the general fund last year, we are already at a $13 million deficit out of that general fund. Now, thankfully, prior boards had set aside some money in a rainy day fund. Also, like I told you, the voters had given us some flexibility on how we could use that second sales tax penny. We were able to kind of make all of that stuff work, and it thankfully all worked out. But again, uh, this gives you a fuller idea of all of that competition that comes into play for those dollars within that general fund. And so, as I was describing to you earlier, it's very, very difficult from year to year to find money for anything other than just the most basic level of education when it comes to, and I'm just talking about uh, when it comes to finding money at the school system level. I'm going to show you in this next slide that in addition to the competition for dollars at the school system level, there's also a lot of competition for dollars at the state level, because again, the vast majority of funds that we receive at the school system level come to us from the state. All right, so finally, just to show you that had the state actually done the revenue increase that they had customarily done in years past, meaning given that 2.75 growth um, per student um, in the state MFP, then the school system would have actually received we would have had $6.8 million more to work with last year. Um, and I only show that to you that to show to you that um, if we would have if we were planning this thing out, let's say we were planning the magnet program 5 years ago before we knew that the state was not going to be cutting this MFP growth factor out, we might would have planned uh, to have that growth. I don't know that folks in the could have had any idea that the state would have done that. Um, but I think we just have to learn the lesson that unless you actually have some sort of secure source of funding for something that's important to you in public education, then you have to operate under the assumption that somebody somewhere is going to try to take those dollars away from you because again. They all have their own priorities somewhere else. You know, someone in Sumner is going to want to have something built over in Sumner, and so they're going to want to take some funds for that project. Certain teachers are going to want raises. Teachers are going to want Christmas bonuses. Those are all. I'm not saying that any of those things aren't worthy things, but that, there are those people's priorities, and they're going to fight for those things. And again, and folks at the state level, those folks have priorities that are other than public education. And I'm going to disagree with them as far as whether their priority is over my priority. But in the meantime, the way that I think I would prefer to deal with that is for us to have a secure source of funding that none of those folks can touch, and we can know that down in the long run, these programs are funded through our secure source of funding. So the common question that I get at this point is that they say, Brett, I don't understand. I mean, doesn't seem like Livingston's having this problem. Doesn't seem like St. Tammany's having these problems. I mean, it just seems like they're just doing so much more. They're doing so much better. They're building these schools. They have all of these other things that they can do. What's the big, what's the deal? And of course, what I point out to them is what I'm going to show you in these next slides. But at the bottom line of all of these next slides is that no other parish in our state spends less per pupil than we do. And what I mean by that is when you add up all of the dollars that we get in every single fund in our parish for public education, and then you divide it by the number of students that we educated, uh, we spend less than any other parish in the state. Bottom line. And here's why. This is the typical tax bill for property tax bill for anyone that owned property in the city of Hammond this year. You will see that the only items on the tax bill that have to do with schools or public education there's one on here for something called the Hammond Alternative School. That's 3 mills. That's for some alternative school programming that we have. There's one on here called School District Number 1. That's 2.5 mills. That's to pay off some debt for some school buildings. That one will actually be coming off of the rolls. This is the last year that one's going to be on there. And then we have that constitutional tax that we talked about earlier. That's all of the property taxes that we pay in Hammond. And I will tell you that for the vast majority of the parish, um, the only one that will show up is that one that you see, the constitutional tax. Okay, so um, with that in mind, if you're looking for the difference, I think, between our neighboring parishes, this is where you'll find it. I can tell you that, as a general rule, pretty much the federal and state funding is going to be all the same for all of us. Um, but property taxes is going to be where you're going to see the biggest difference. St. Tammany Parish here, this comes off of the state website. St. Tammany Parish is paying somewhere around 67 mills. Livingston Parish, 37 mills. You'll see there at the bottom the state average is 40 mills. At this point, the 2010, we were at 10 mills as a parish average. You'll see, as a pretty much everyone is at this 2 pennies in sales taxes, a few a little bit higher. Pretty much nobody is lower. Um, and I can tell you that I know for a fact that actually Livingston and St. Tammany have both passed additional property tax millages since 2010, and we have actually had some property taxes that have come off of the books since 2010. So in reality, if I could find a more recent chart on the state website, the disparity between our parishes would be even wider. Just finally, while we're comparing ourselves to our neighbors, I did want to show you this slide again from the Department of Education's website, just to show you that the disparity between us and our neighbors um, is not really a disparity between the quality of the teachers that we can attract. Because again, although we are dead last in the amount of money that we spend on our students per pupil, it is not reflected in the amount of money that we spend on teachers' salaries, because you'll see that we are actually at the state average, are very close to the state average in what we are paying our teachers. We rank 69th in the state in total per pupil spending, but we rank 36th in the state in average teacher salaries. We're also pretty close to the state average in average class sizes. So I will say that what I believe that shows us, and what the state studies have actually found, is that really what all of that means is that we are very, very efficient when it comes to using tax dollars in this parish. We use those tax dollars by necessity where they matter most, which is on our teachers, and on making sure that we get the best teachers that we can afford. Um, so again, um, the in comparing ourselves to our neighbors, the primary difference comes in how much Livingston and St. Tammany Parish is investing in local tax dollars to kind of give their public schools that little bit extra that those parents and students can get. And as I said at the beginning of this presentation, that's really the question that we have to answer in the city of Hammond, is do we want to have um, something more than just that basic level of education in the city of Hammond? And if we do want to have something more than just that basic level of education in the city of Hammond, then we're going to have to be willing to invest something in order to do it, just like our neighbors do. All right, so here's the general proposal to secure our Hammond Magnet programs. First, we would set up a special revenue fund that can only be used for Hammond schools and can only be used to keep our specified programs as outlined by the voters. And we're going to talk about those specific programs in just a few minutes. Second, we would require within the election call and make it law that these special revenue funds must be used in addition to what those schools would have already received from the general fund. Another way of saying that is that you can't take away funds that those schools were going to receive anyway, since they're now going to receive these funds from this special revenue fund. So we're going to put some protections in there to make sure that these funds are going to be going in on top of what those schools would have already been receiving. The way we would collect funds for this special revenue fund is through a property millage paid for only by Hammond voters, and it would be 15 mills. And at that 15 mills, what I would point out is that at 15 mills, even when you add that to the constitutional millage and the 3 mills that we currently pay in Hammond for the alternative school program, we would still in Hammond be paying half of the state average for public schools. Because remember that state average as of 2010, it was around 40 mills. We would still be paying half of what Livingston Parish is paying. We would still be paying 1/3 of what St. Tammany is paying, and we would still be in the bottom three of the total amount of per pupil spending that we spend in our parish for public education. And I would just tell you that I'm still okay with that, because I still think that it's the right thing to do, and we should be demanding of our school system that they be incredibly efficient with our tax dollars. I don't think we should expect them to do miracles, which is what I think we're kind of doing uh, right now. But I do think we should expect them to be efficient. And I would just tell you that according to every state study I've seen in the last few years, uh, our school system has been in the top 10 when it comes to efficiency with state dollars. And that's good news for us. So uh, uh, this proposal would secure approximately $3.5 million for those Hammond Magnet programs. It would secure those programs for the long term. So if when a parent chooses to put their child into these programs, they can know that they will be there for the long haul. And we have had this. The administration actually identify specific positions that they will secure uh, with these dollars, and they've identified 63.4 positions that are over and above the normal uh, allocation that we would have uh, absent having these funds. All right, finally, let's go through the schools and programs that would receive funding through this secured fund, beginning with our flagship school, of course, the Hammond High Magnet School with its IB, Medical Magnet, ProStart, and Torbotics program. Just some other things on this slide to note while we're here. Would point out to you that we currently have a capacity within our buildings in this district of 6,700 students. We have 5,100 students currently in that district. We have 559 students that are transferring out with the M to M transfers, but we have 646 students that are currently transferring in because of the attractiveness of these programs. And we hope that number continues to increase. And actually, I think that number's 1 year old, so we may have more than that now. And also, just to note for you that part of this whole program is that we do provide transportation to the students that are transferring in to take advantage of these magnet programs. Okay, so then finally at the pre-K to 8 level, um, a couple of things to talk to you about it as far as this slide is concerned. First is to tell you that the goal or the vision here is to make sure that we are offering quality, distinct options at each grade level. And so, first off, when we talk about quality, what we're talking about is we want data driven and studied programs that we have in place at these schools. So we don't want just something that we've just kind of made up. So when we're talking about Montessori or International Baccalaureate or communications or STEM, these are things that folks have, from all across the country have studied. They have a definition. Folks know what they are. Folks are trained on them. Folks come in and monitor them. They get authorization from outside sources. They have a definition. They are proven, right? So that's one component. That the same is true with this TAP program that we have. There's a foundation that came up with this TAP program, which is essentially what TAP is a way that we are we evaluate our teachers. We're evaluating data. We're ensuring that our students are achieving success, and we're assuring that our teachers are achieving success. And when they don't achieve success, we try to figure out how we can help those teachers. And we have what we call master teachers and mentor teachers that are helping those teachers along the way. And it's all kind of job embedded and things like that. So, but when I say quality, that's what we're talking about. Things that are defined, things that are studied, things that are proven. And so that's what you will see on everything on this page. Then the part that we talk about is distinct, right? So we want these things to be different. Everybody kind of has a different notion of what might work best for their child, and that's it doesn't do any good, right, to have options if all of the options are the same. So or doesn't I guess another way of saying that is it doesn't do me any good to have choices or to tell me you have given me choices if there's no distinction between the choices. So all of these things actually are very distinct, and they have their own kind of benefits depending on what might be going on with your family or your particular student. And then, of course, the final part is that these options have to be available at each grade level, and that's something that we have not quite implemented yet. And all these other things on this page, those are well into implementation. Montessori, that training is for the most part done. IB, we're in our final year of authorization for that at Hammond Eastside. Communications and the technology components at Woodland Park, that's well on its way. STEM's well on its way. TAP is well on its way. But the grade level thing is something that we're still working on with to get court approval on. But I think that that's very important, primarily because if you don't have these options at each grade levels, then you're not really giving family choices or options because you're only actually all you're doing is giving them different programs at different grades, meaning that from they're only going to be Montessori through the sixth grade, and then they're all of a sudden going to be STEM when they get to the junior high school. So we need to get these grade levels put in place, and that's part of this vision, part of this program, and we're all still very hopeful that will get done. And in fact, that has already been approved as part of Hammond Eastside. Last thing on this slide is that the lab school, we do have two positions, the art and music positions, that for the last few years at least have been funded with magnet program, magnet funds. And of course, I want to make sure we secure funding for those positions as well, which is part of this program. All right, so normally at this point in the presentation, I would stop and take questions and comments from the audience, and again, I would really ask that you do that. My contact information is going to be on the next slide, and I really do hope to hear from you. But before we do that, I do want to go ahead and address the question that I get most often about this issue, and that question is why not make a parish-wide fund to support the magnet programs? And really the answer to that is multifaceted. Number one is of course that Hammond really is the primary beneficiary of the magnet programs. Hammond is the only city that has a city-wide magnet program. We certainly have the largest group of students that's benefited from the magnet programs. While it is true that there are a few towns that have some very small schools with some magnet programs in it here and there, no other town has anything close to what we are doing in Hammond. So Hammond has certainly the most to gain, both from an economic development and from a quality of life standpoint, by ensuring that these programs remain successful. And I would just invite you to just pause and imagine uh, what a transformation would take place in the city of Hammond and really in the parish as a whole uh, when these programs become truly successful and we can say that we have truly great public schools in the city of Hammond. And that is the path that we are on once we can get these programs secured for the long term. So, given that Hammond has the most to gain, it really is only fair and right that Hammond should be the primary investors in these programs. But really, the answer as to why Hammond would want to have a Hammond-based funding mechanism for for these programs is because the math actually works better for Hammond by doing it this way. And what I mean is that when Hammond pays a parish-wide millage, the it actually turns out that we lose 50% of what we pay in a parish-wide millage because of the way that the parish-wide millage is divided amongst the rest of the parish. We have the vast majority of the property value in this parish, and so when we pay those tax dollars on a parish-wide basis, they get spread out amongst the whole rest of the parish. By paying uh, just in this district and then directing that those funds stay within this district, we're able to keep all of those dollars and invest 100% of those dollars into our schools. So the math works out better. It's a much better deal for us, and it's definitely the way to go. Just want to close by again thanking you for watching this presentation and ask that you please do send me your thoughts, your questions, your concerns. My contact information is here again on the slide. We expect that the board will be voting on this proposal at its special meeting on February the 11th, and I do hope to hear from you prior to that vote.